Greetings, welcome to a user's review of the Blackmagic Pocket 6K exclusively for handheld run and gun style video. Now a lot of people have trouble with the Pocket 6K with the run and gun style video. I once owned a 6K before and I sold it just because it was a camera that only sat on sticks. I couldn't see the screen outside because it wasn't bright enough. And also stabilization was a kind of issue. And of course, there is the perennial problem with the battery. All those things had to be solved to make the Blackmagic 6K a very useful and practical camera for handheld video. So having said that, let's get into it. Well, what is the solution to the first problem? I mean, in bright sunlight, the screen is really not bright enough at all to be able to see it. I mean, it's really impossible. You can't shoot in the shade forever, you know, and even then, it's not very good. Well, what's the solution? Well, when I first owned the 6K, the one that I sold, the solution was not really, I think it was forthcoming, but it wasn't available. And here it is. See this guy? This is the Kinotanic LCD viewfinder, and I'll include links to this and other stuff that I'm referencing down below if anybody's interested. This LCD viewfinder is specifically made for that big, beautiful screen of the Blackmagic. And it not only shows you that big, beautiful screen in kind of a movie-like enclosure so that it's the only thing you see, but also expands it and makes it even larger. So the image quality out of this is really fantastic. Now, a couple things about this particular viewfinder. It does multiply the size of the lens, the LCD about, I don't know, maybe 2 times or maybe even more. But it's really big. It's really easy to see. In the brightest sunlight, this enclosure right here is your solution as far as being able to see in daylight. Okay, but there are a few caveats. Now, if you're like me, you use glasses, don't have exactly perfect vision, when you get the viewfinder, you'll say, what? I can't see. Everything's blurry. There's no adjustment on it or anything. Well, there is a provision for that. The viewfinder here, the back part of the viewfinder, provides screw threads to 46 millimeter diopters that you can drop in here. They come in different strengths, +1, +2, +3, and you can combine them or build them up, whatever you want, to give you a good, perfectly sharp, perfectly good image that you can use to shoot your video. Now, you can buy these diopters from Kinotanic directly. Actually, when I bought these, those diopters were not available. I think they are now. But you can also go on, let's see, where would that be? Amazon.com. I know that's a shocker. And put in 46 millimeter diopters, and you will get several sets, and they're not expensive at all. So if you don't have perfect vision, if you're a little visually challenged with presbyopia or whatever, there is a solution provided. It's an elegant solution, and it's very nice. So you'll be able to see perfectly with this, and that will make daytime shooting and handheld shooting a piece of cake. Problem number 2 is battery life. Now, obviously, Blackmagic provides ways that we can extend the video capabilities without worrying about batteries by, connecting with the LEMO on the side. So that's a piece of cake. But when you're running and gunning, you're not going to be able to stretch an electrical cord out there so you can do what you need to do. You need to be free to move around. Well, Blackmagic actually did provide us with eventually a decent solution, and that is their battery grip. This is very good. I really like it because it adds to the heft and to the weight of the camera and helps it stabilize it, but it also provides a compartment of 2 batteries that you can use, and they're standard Sony style batteries. And how long do they last? Well, that depends on the amount of amperage that you have, milliamps. So what I would advise, if you decide you're going to get one of these battery grips, to try to, if you want, to do some sustained shooting, try to get milliamps at least like 2,900 milliamps, 3,000 milliamps. Now, Atomos actually produces a 570 Sony style battery that is 3,500 milliamps. Now, I don't notice a great deal of difference between these two. There are these different brands, but you can find several of them on, shocker, Amazon or other places. But they will give you considerably more shooting time than those terrible standard Canon, LP6 batteries, which basically last long enough for you to turn the camera on. I can probably get a good hour or more, maybe an hour and 25 minutes. So of just straight video from these. Again, depending on what you're shooting, whether it's ProRes or whether you're shooting RAW, that has some effect on it. But they last acceptably well. So you can walk around with, say, 6 of these 570, 550, 570 Sony batteries, Sony style batteries, and you can shoot a pretty good amount of time with those. So that really does solve the problem. And again, I like that battery grip. It helps balance the camera a little bit better, especially so you can implement with more ease and a little more stability the solution number 3, which is the lack of IBIS in the camera. Okay, well, the solution to the third problem, which is lack of in-camera stabilization, is having lenses that are stabilized. Now, I want to say something about that because I think a lot of people don't have a lot of experience with this because they've been sort of gaslit by IBIS and all that you find in other cameras, which I find of varying quality. Some of the IBIS has been mediocre at best, and some of it's just downright terrible. And the camera companies, to their credit, have worked very hard to make the IBIS better and better. So, okay, kudos to them. But we don't have that in the Blackmagic 6K. So what do? Well, what we do is we use stabilized lenses. Canon has insisted for the longest time that stabilized lenses are a much better solution than any IBIS that you know. And I, having experienced both now, I tend to agree with Canon with maybe 1 or 2 caveats, and that would be the stabilization of the Panasonic GH5, stabilization of the Olympus cameras. So those really have great stabilization, and they also have the combination of lens and sensor stabilization. It gives you even something better. And so those things have improved. But with the lens stabilization, there are a couple things that are really wonderful that I never insofar as that I never encounter a lot of the common IBIS issues, and that is kind of the jello effect, the kind of warpage and the weird stuff. In various cameras, it's better. In some cameras, it's worse, but it's really, for the most part, kind of a big problem. you never know when a particular clip is going to be ruined. You make the wrong movement, or maybe the shot is too wide. You get warpage for various reasons because of that floating sensor. That's not an issue at all with cameras that or with lenses that have the stabilization in the lens themselves. You never see that, and it's really great. Plus, the stabilization is really good, especially with the lenses that I use on this camera. So let's talk about those lenses for a second. Obviously now I'm only going to be using lenses that are stabilized. So do we have anything that's decent? Fortunately, we not only have some decent lenses, we have some really great lenses. Now, Canon, they made the good move of making inexpensive and light and also very good quality, maybe not L quality, but very good quality lenses for their APS-C cameras. I took their STM lenses that they made, and I actually shot an extensive video in 4K on this Canon C300 Mark II, and I used those STM lenses that are made especially for APS-C sensors, and it turned out great. It turned out really great, and I think anyone would be hard-pressed to see the difference in that video and the quality that I would get on maybe some of the L lenses. But fortunately, we have almost L lens quality in some of these STM lenses. One, surprisingly, is the one I have on the camera here. This is a fantastic lens. It's got in-lens stabilization, and it has a constant 2.8 aperture. And it's probably the one that lives on the camera, say, at least has equal time with another lens that I really love. This is not a cheap lens, and it's also not a light lens. Now, some of the EFS lenses are light with great stabilization, but this ain't one of them. This guy here has a beautiful image. A lot of people that shoot it, they equate it to L quality lens in terms of sharpness and all that. And the stabilization I find on this lens is excellent. I don't have any problem, and it'll give you a range of 17 to 55. Not sure, that's probably about 30 to 80 or something like that in full frame. So it gives you a very, very decent range. Beautiful image, plenty of light, and with the dynamic range of the Blackmagic, you don't really have many problems shooting and getting good exposure, even in what you call less than ideal lighting, which you run into all the time when you're shooting run and gun. So this is really a great lens. And the other thing about this lens, and also the other lenses I'm going to be recommending, is that they have a manual focus override. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, with the Blackmagic, you can set this lens and these other lenses on autofocus. Of course, we don't have continual autofocus on the Blackmagic, so what good does that do us? Well, it's simple. You do your one push in the back, on the back button there, to get your focus, your initial focus. And without having to switch into manual focus, on the front of the lens, you have a focus override, so you can take the focus ring and begin doing manual focus. And the other thing that makes these lenses eminently recommendable is the manual focus is not a focus by wire manual focus. It's mechanical focus, so you can do focus pulls, do them repeatedly, and you'll get the same results, which, if any of you know about focus by wire lenses, that for manual focus in video, they're all but useless, okay? And I don't know why they've done that in the first place. I guess someone could give me a good reason. Maybe some of you viewing could give me a good reason why they have these focus by wire lenses. But for video, I find them absolutely useless. So this lens right here is an ideal lens. It gives you plenty of light. It gives you mechanical focus override of autofocus. So getting a good sharp image to begin with the one push autofocus, you'll get a beautiful image. You'll get exactly what you want. And then if you want to do focus pulls, piece of cake. Just reach for the focus wheel and bingo, you're right there. So those are some of the virtues of this lens and the other lenses I'm going to be showing you. Now the next lens I'm going to be showing you is another Canon lens. It has all those features that I just mentioned, mechanical focus, override and so you don't have to change the lens. And it also is beautifully stabilized. I love this lens. It's heavy and that's not cheap. It's an EFS lens and it gives you a focal range of 15 to 85. Now this is a much more practical range to shoot with than the 17 to 55. And I use this a lot. It's not a constant aperture, however. It's trying to remember here. It's 3.5 to 5.6, which ain't bad. Generally speaking, depending on the light that you shoot in, you can just set the aperture to 5.6, and then zooming in, zooming out, you're not going to get any darkening or brightening. So, okay, and here it is. It is another EFS lens, and it is a fantastic lens. It's an amazing lens. Its range is 55 to 250 millimeters. And you can do some pretty good bird shooting with this if you want to. And the image is really, really beautiful. Now, of course, taking the advice of someone, you'd say, well, Tom, you're just an amateur. As I understand, okay, because I get a lot of recommendations for people who are not in my profession, not really professionals. And, you always got to consider the source. So let me recommend to you that you look up Christopher Frost on YouTube. He's probably the best and most dogged lens reviewer that you can find on YouTube. And he specializes in just lens reviews. He seldom ever, I don't think I ever remember him actually recommending a camera or talking about a camera. And he specializes with Canon lenses. And he's reviewed all these lenses, these three lenses, and plus a lot more. And these three lenses, the reason that I latched onto them to begin with is because Christopher Frost highly rates these lenses, and he ain't wrong, okay? Now, the EFS 55 to 250, when you have presbyopia, you have to wear your glasses to see what you're doing. So, yeah, this is a 4.5. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a 4 to 5.6. EFS 55 to 250. Now, that's going to be, that final range is going to be close to 300 millimeters. And it has excellent stabilization and also a beautiful, beautiful image. And as you would think, the focus override. So you can shoot in autofocus, punch in, get your autofocus, and then you can immediately begin focus pulling. Now, I'll have to say that as far as the focus rings go, this is a little bit loose. It's a little harder to control than the others, but it's such a great image, and it's kind of hard to complain about something that small because it is controllable, it is usable. Now, in contrast, the other two lenses that I recommended, they have very good manual focus rings. The 15 to 85 has got a really nice manual focus ring. I mean, it's not as good as as the EF lenses, uh, the EF red ring lenses, but it's quite good, and also so is the 17 to 55. Very, very good. So right there, you see the entire collection. What did I do with the other? Oh, here we go. It's kind of dark down there. It's hard to see. There is the trio that I use for run and gun. Now, the beauty of this is I have a wide range that I can shoot with the zoom lenses. The quality of the zoom lenses is very good. And also, they're light enough that this kind of trio enables you a lot of mobility, and you're not going to be totally worn out. If you want something really wider than that, of course, there's the Canon 10 to 18 EFS lens. Again, very quiet and a very good lens. I say not the quality of these lenses, but good enough. Now, there is one more EFS lens, and I'm shooting with it right now, actually, and that is the 18 to 135. It's a variable aperture lens. So you say, well, Tom, why don't you recommend that? Well, I'd love to recommend it. It's a very good lens. It would be a viable option over the 24 to 120 f4 lens that the EF lens that Canon makes. But for one problem, for some reason or another, the 18 to 135 EFS lens is focused by wire. So you do have a focus override, but it's focused by wire. So it's impossible to make a focus pull and to do it predictably and with the control that you can when you have mechanical focus. Okay, so sitting on the end of my 17 to 55 lens is the solution for shooting outside, as you would think, and it is a variable neutral density filter. Now, this is a Peter McKinnon Polar Pro, and it goes from 6 stops to 9. 6 to 9. And then there is a second one that goes from 2 stops to 5, I think, or maybe 6. Anyway, I used those two lenses in the 77 millimeter mount, and I adapt all those with step rings. So I have these two filters, variable filters, and they fit on a variety of lenses by step rings. Now, the reason I don't have the proper lens for each one, why I'm using step rings, is just because these Polar Pro variables are expensive. And I will say that especially this 6 to 9 stop filter will give you some vignetting in the corners and everything. Now, why don't I recommend, say, some other variables, like the Tiffin, for instance, variable, which generally speaking is very good? Well, the primary reason I don't is because of, we know, the awful cross pattern that you get, the awful X, if you go too far. And I've ruined so many videos by over adjusting those variable ND filters, and then this, the sky gets dark. It's got the X, and it's just awful. You don't get that with these variable NDs. Well, I think with that, I've covered pretty much everything. Now, the beauty of this entire setup here, the 3 lenses, and the 4, actually, if you want to include that really wide angle 10 to 18 EFS lens, right here, the whole ball of wax fits in a small case that I can carry, small handbag. So it gives me a lot of portability, a lot of lightness, so that I can move quickly and go from place to place. And no, I don't use a rig. I try to minimally mount things here. And shooting running gun, I'm not normally worried about sound. Now, I do have a microphone, external microphone. If I am concerned, it's going to be about sound. But generally speaking, the kind of running gun videos I do, sound is not all that much of an issue because the music takes preeminence. Okay, so that's about it. I'll include links for all this below. And so here's some of my handheld video, for better or for worse. I'm sure that you all can do much better. But this is the easiest way to do it that I've found. If you know an easier way, let me know. And thanks for watching another user's review.